Hi, I'm Dwayne Pate, and today we're going to be exploring the world of two-handed tapping. Now, two-handed tapping has become really popular among space players these days, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different techniques, so it doesn't matter if you're a beginner and you've just started to get into tapping, or if you've been doing it quite a while. Chances are there'll be something in this video for you. And like I said, we're going to be talking about a lot of different techniques, and some of the things we're going to be talking about, for instance, are cross-string tapping, slapping and tapping together, playing bass lines and comping at the same time, playing bass lines and melody lines at the same time, and some other things. But before we get into any of that, there's a couple practice habits I'd like to talk about that I think are real important. And the first one is using a metronome. Now, there's a couple really good reasons for using a metronome. The first reason is it helps develop good time. And I'll say it right off the bat, if you're not practicing with a metronome, you're wasting your time. It's just as important as having strings on your bass. So get into the habit of practicing with a metronome. Now, the second good reason is it can be a really good gauge for your progress. And what I mean by that, suppose you've got a lick or an exercise you're working on at 60 beats per minute, but you want to get it up to a much faster tempo, say 150 or 200. All you have to do is push the metronome up little by little each day, and in a couple weeks from now or a month from now, when you're up to 200, you can look back and say, whoa, I started at 60, now I'm at 200, and that can be a really good incentive for you to keep practicing. The progress is right there in front of you. Now, the other practice habit I'd like to talk about real briefly is playing things slowly. Remember, it's always best to play something slow and clean and fast and sloppy. So when you're practicing, start your licks, your exercises off real slow and work your way up to a faster tempo. All right, before we go any further, let's tune up. Starting with your G string. Now your D string. Now your A string. Now the E. Right now we should do a little bit of talking about the setup of the bass. Now, I tend to keep my action fairly low, and this can be especially important if you're a beginner with this stuff. The object is to set up your strings at a height that feels comfortable for tapping so you get a good clean sound without having to hammer too hard. But at the same time, you want to get a minimal amount of fret noise. Now, it's usually a pretty easy procedure to raise or lower your action depending on what kind of bridge you have. But if you can't figure it out, you might want to take it to an instrument repair shop and have them do it for you. Let's start by looking at a simple slapping and tapping exercise. Now, traditionally, a hammer-on is played by plucking a note first, then hammering your finger down while the string is still vibrating in order to sound the next note. However, by hammering hard enough like this, the string will vibrate on its own without having to actually pluck anything. Now, with pull-offs, you're sort of plucking the string with your left hand and setting it into motion as you pull off to make the lower note sound like this. Now, what we're going to be exploring on this tape is the use of both the right and left hands together to play hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, pull-offs can be a little bit tricky because you can run into other strings when you're doing your pull-offs and make all kinds of weird noises that you don't want to make. So right now we're going to do some exercises that will help clean up your sound. The first exercise sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the main problem with pull-offs is hitting other strings that you don't want to hit, like this. What you want to do is just gently touch the other string enough to dampen it. I'm just barely touching it. It's almost impossible not to hit it at all, but just gently dampen it. Now let's talk about your directions of your pull-offs. When you're doing pull-offs in the right hand, it's most comfortable to pull off in an upward motion, like that. And And when you're pulling off with your left hand, it's most comfortable to pull off in a downward motion, like that. Let's take another look at that from overhead. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we'll turn that around for the next exercise and play it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now all we're doing there is kind of doing the whole thing backwards. Instead of starting with this hammer on and that pull off, we're going to start with this hammer on and that pull off. Now keep in mind the object of this is to keep from hitting strings that you don't want to hit. So let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in our next exercise, we're going to combine both hammer-ons and pull-offs in a simple one-string C major scale. And this is how it should sound. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now all I'm doing there is holding down the C for the entire exercise, and I'm kind of using the C and the D as common tones to pivot off from. And then I'm just starting on E and working my way up the scale and then back down. And you'll also notice that my thumb rests on top of the neck and my ring finger is hooked underneath as I slide up and down the neck. Now this kind of acts as a guide so that my hand doesn't wander around too much. So let's try this again at a faster tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'd like to show you how I can apply this technique in a soloing situation. And this is kind of a hip thing. What we're going to do is play some hammer-ons and pull-offs on a simple one-string major scale to form modes over the various chords. For instance, if we take that C major scale and we play the first three notes of the scale, C, D, and E, and play some hammer-ons and pull-offs around those notes, that's the first degree or first mode of the scale. And those notes will work for anything revolving around C major. And then if we take the next three notes of the scale, D, E, and F, that's the second degree or second mode of the scale, and those notes will work for anything revolving around D minor. Then if we take the next three notes of the scale, E, F, and G, that's the third degree or third mode of the scale. Those notes will work for anything revolving around E minor. Then if we take the next three notes of the scale, F, G, and A, that's the fourth degree or fourth mode of the scale. And those notes will work for anything revolving around F major. Then if we take the next three notes of the scale, G, A, and B, that's the fifth degree or fifth mode of the scale. And those notes will work for anything revolving around G7. Now if we take the next three notes of the scale, A, B, and C, that's the sixth degree or sixth mode of the scale, and those notes will work for anything revolving around A minor. Then if we take the next three notes of the scale, B, C, and D, that's the seventh degree or seventh mode of the scale, and those notes will work for anything revolving around B half diminished. So now I'm going to demonstrate this with a band, and I'm going to take a four-chord progression moving from D minor 7 to E flat major to C minor to A flat major. And I'm going to use a lot of the same modes we just talked about. Let's take this basic technique one step further now and get into some cross-string tapping. Now, this can be a really good way to help your right hand coordination on the neck so you start to get the feel for where each one of the strings are. Now you want to get real comfortable with this so you can nail whichever string you want when you want without missing. And that can be real hard when you're playing at faster tempos. For this first example, I'm going to hold down an F7 chord in the left hand like this. And I'm going to do some hammer-ons and pull-offs all on the 15th fret. And first I'll start with just my index finger, like that. But what you eventually want to do is get your other fingers into the picture, at least your first three, like this. So let's try that with the click. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, now in example 2, we're going to throw some plucking with our right thumb into the picture. It'll be in a downward motion like this. So let's play this with a click, and I'm going to also throw in some variations. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now all I'm doing there is playing some notes that sound good against the chord. So just try it out and experiment a little bit. And if it sounds good, go with it. We'll get more into the theory of which notes to use in the next section. Right now, just use your ears. Now like we talked about before, you can use this technique for a soloing technique, or you can just use it for accompaniment behind another soloist. So now let's take a more interesting chord progression. Let's go from B major 7 to F sharp minor 7 to G sharp minor 7 to G major 7, and this will be in 7/4 time. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I'd like to apply these hammer-on and pull-off techniques to playing some specific arpeggios. Now an arpeggio is simply just a broken